Okay, mythology from coins. This is a huge topic to talk about, of course, and I try to keep it nice and short so that you don't feel overwhelmed. But it is an overwhelming area of study, especially by looking at ancient coins. We see a lot of mythological stories. And these stories come from different civilizations, different cultures. So we have to keep that in mind. We have Greek, Roman, Anatolian, and Egyptian mythologies that we can observe on ancient coins. That's why I didn't want to entitle the presentation Greek mythology, Roman mythology, or this and that. But people who write about mythology love to designate that, and you see a lot under the title Greek mythology or Roman mythology. In any case, many cultures, based on what we see on coins, it is safe to say that many cultures accepted and adapted many of the stories that are attributed to a certain culture. So we understand that ancient people were not as divisive as we have been nowadays, and this is something good to keep in mind. There is always something to learn from history. What was mythology for in ancient times? Why did these people make up these stories? Religious purposes, imperial purposes, and civic purposes? All of them. They had reasons to come up with these stories. But the main stimulus was actually to understand how we came to be, and they had to find or produce an explanation as to how we came to be. And then, of course, when we look at the coins, we have to interpret what we see correctly. Is there a symbolism that we are dealing with, or there is a storytelling that we are dealing with? So I'm going to touch on those topics as we weigh on individual coins. Of course, the main topic can be identified as Greek mythology, and the story begins with the theogony of Hesiod, or Hesiodos in Greek. This guy took the challenge to sit down and write all the stories that have been transferred from ancient times in oral tradition. Without him, we would have not known how these gods and goddesses came to be. And of course, we have other people who wrote about it, but Hesiod is the earliest one in the 8th century BC, 750s. Nobody knows exactly when, but he created this writing so that we now know the oral tradition of the ancient Greek culture during that time. And the most important element is the cosmogony, how the Earth or the universe, the cosmos was created. So he says, first there was chaos without shape or light. just like we define the black hole right now. We cannot explain what it is. Some physicists tell us that there's this black hole that swallows everything. So many universes, this and that. Just like that. That's how they felt about the universe, the cosmos. And all of a sudden, Gaia, the mother earth, emerged to give a place where men and gods could walk on. So this is really interesting. When the earth was first created, or when Gaia was first came to be, it was a land for men and gods, divinities could coexist. They lived together. And deep beneath the Gaia swirled the mist of Tartarus, later the prison of rebellious titans. Then, interestingly, Eros, or Eros, the god of sexual love, came. Why do we need it so early? Because we will see no birth of gods, giants, animals, or man would have taken place without his power of attraction. So those who formalized the creation of the world or the universe put a lot of thought into that. They had to justify their stories in such way that it is believable. Of course, in the meantime, the story continues. The underworld, the night, the upper air, the day were created. Those who are familiar with the Bible will relate to the story here. So continuing on, Gaia, after a while, felt lonely. And of course, now Eros comes to the scene. With the touch of Eros, she made Uranus a lover, a companion for herself. Uranus was the heaven later on, showered her with heavenly rain and produced the swirling depths of Oceanus. The river at that time, and the first of the Titans. Thea and Phoebe and their renowned sister Tethys of the sea, Themis and Rhea of the earth, and Mnemosyne, memory, came next. And many more offspring came afterwards, among who was Cronos. Of course, I'm jumping and the lines, not to make it too long. And after a while, some of the children were monstrous, and Uranus was not happy with that, and he started to kill his offspring. And Gaia was not happy about that, and in despair, she plotted with Cronos, the youngest son, to eliminate her husband. And she gave Cronos a sickle to stop his evil father. And Uranus waited for the night to fall, and then, Cronos waited for the night to fall, and when Uranus came to Mount Gaia, he just grabbed the genitals of his father and cut them off and threw them carelessly behind. And the genitals landed on a beach where the waves caressed them, while Eros and Himeros, the desire, attended to the scene. From the white foams of the sea emerged a beautiful goddess, and she was named Aphrodite, or Aphrodite, foam-born. The story is extensive. I would definitely recommend that you take the time and read Theogony. It is available online and, of course, in print as well. But most of these stories appear on coins here and there, and we can track the story on the coins of many cultures. The most represented deities on coins are the Olympian gods, and Zeus, Hera, Athene, Hephaestus, Ares, Aphrodite, Apollon, Artemis, Demeter, Hestia, Poseidon, and Hermes. Hestia is not so much common. Sometimes some ancient writers include Dionysos or Dionysus in the 12. They exclude Hestia, but from the beginning, Hestia is one of the 12 Olympians. And then, of course, Dionysus, Hades, Heracles, and Eros. They were not invited to the Mount Olympus at the beginning. They were included later, or like Hades, he was never included in the mountain because his place was under the world. So he was not supposed to be there. Yet he is part of the game. So for mythology, it comes from the Greek word mythos, utterance, saying, and mythologia is literally storytelling. You have to have someone to tell a story. And who else do we have, or who better do we have other than Homeros to tell us stories? And sure enough, he appears on the coinage of Smyrna and several other ancient cities. This is a beautiful representation of the storyteller sitting on a chair, holding some kind of a scepter. And this is traditional in storytelling. Why do I say that? In the ancient, not ancient, but historical tradition of Anatolia, we have people called meta. They are storytellers. They are the predecessors of stand-up comedians. They would appear on a high platform, and they would have a scepter like this, a stick in their hand, and they would tell stories, mimicking the protagonists and making fun of them. And so, interestingly, that ancient tradition from the time of Homer continued to survive in Anatolia. That's what that scepter or a stick meant at that time. So they were not alone. It was an element that they can rely on, sometimes rest on it, sometimes raise it, sometimes swing it, and to make the story as lively as they could. And of course, being such a popular storyteller, quite many cities claimed Homeros. And here is a city in Paphlagonia, in Black Sea region, Anatolia, Amastris. You won't believe how many coins they minted with the same subject. So they really had a huge claim on Homeros at that time. Of course, the most famous story or stories Homerus told us are the Trojan War and the Odyssey. And from early periods, we see Trojan personalities appearing on coins. The most famous hero who unfortunately died very quickly before even the war really heated up was Protesilaus. He was the Thessalian prince, and there was a prophecy at that time that the first man who touched the Trojan soil would be the first to die. But somebody had to do that. And he was brave enough to take the challenge. And when the Achaean ships arrived at Troy, Protesilaus leaped ashore and he was immediately killed. His wife, Laodamia, mourned his death so excessively that the gods allowed his image to visit her for 3 hours. This is really curious. When he returned to Hades, she was overcome with grief and took her own life. And interestingly, the city of Sicyon in Macedon decided to use his likeness on the obverse of a coin. And if that is not enough, they wanted to identify him by inscribing his name. Albeit retrograde, it is around the helmet, as you can see. And on other coins, we continue to see him. This time, as you see, he just jumped and started to head forward, but he's not going to be able to go any further. We also know that Odysseus, he was a very smart warrior. He threw his shield on the ground and leaped on his shield so that he wouldn't step on the Trojan soil, not to get killed. So the storytellers thought through and came up with great solutions to the intricate stories. We have a lot of stories in the Trojan War represented on coins, and one of them is about Achilles. He was sulking in his tent at the abuse of Agamemnon, and his friend Patroclus had donned his armor and joined the battle around the walls of Troy. He was overconfident, and unfortunately Hector thought he was Achilles, and he confronted the not so perfect warrior Patroclus, and he killed him. And without knowing that it is Patroclus, he dragged off his armored corpse as a war prize. So long story short, Achilles lost his armor, and his mother, the sea nymph Thetis, went to Hephaestus and persuaded him to build a new set of armor for her son. And sure enough, he's a coin from Thyatira in Lydia during the time of Commodus, Roman Emperor Commodus. We see Hephaestus sitting on a kippus, a short column, and forging a helmet with his hammer. And while Athena is not just standing, one hand is touching the column, most likely helping Hephaestus to finish his work. And on another coin here from Aspendos in Pamphylia, struck during the time of Valerian, one of the most famous depiction of Hephaestus, seated on a rock forge holding hammer and resting arm on shield set on his knee. This is such a common scene that we see on the coins of many other cities. Here is another one, quite enigmatic. This time, we don't know exactly what he is forging on the anvil, but it must have been one of the pieces of the armor for Achilles. But of course, Hephaestus was not only forging armor for Achilles, he was providing other types of metal works for other gods and goddesses. Now that we're talking about Hephaestus, let's continue and relate his story to Aphrodite and Ares. Hephaestus was lame and he looked very ugly. And the main reason was he did something that Hera, the wife of Zeus, didn't like, and he threw him of the Olympus mountain, and tumbling down, he got injured and he became lame. It is most likely because Hephaestus split open the head of Zeus with an axe when the king of the Olympians was suffering from a terrible headache. And from the gaping head emerged Athena. Hephaestus was the only Olympian actually did physical work. Others enjoyed themselves, but Hephaestus did work as an artisan and produced day-to-day household items for the Olympian gods. Anyways, back to the story. It is said that his wife Aphrodite was caught with Ares in the embrace of love. Helios saw the lovers and told Hephaestus of the affair. The noble smith devised a clever trap to snare the lovers, and once captured, displayed them to the other immortals. Hephaestus refused to release the ensnared couple until he received an adulterer's payment from Ares. Of course, Ares was not in a position to promise something, or he was not credible enough. So Poseidon offered to pay if he defaulted, and Hephaestus released the embarrassed lovers from their bonds. Apollon and Hermes watched this spectacle, and when asked, Hermes said he would endure thrice as many bonds if he could only share the bed of Aphrodite the golden. So really interesting, intricate relationships about the nobility. Some modern researchers believe that some of these stories were created for the royalty, and then there were stories created for regular people. So many rulers in ancient times, whether they are kings or queens or emperors or empresses, use the example of ancient or mythological deities deeds to justify their deeds. So it's really interesting. Here is a coin of Maximinus, Roman emperor, from Tralles in Lydia, showing Aphrodite or Venus standing at left and embracing the naked Ares. And here is another one from Amasia in Pontus, struck for Lucius Verus. And we see the couple again. This time they're not very intimate, but this time Aphrodite is completely nude, while Ares is represented in his military attire. Of course, for us to recognize him, we have to see his helmet and his spear, and this is a very a good example for that. And as I said, Hephaestus was not only forging armors for Achilles, and here he is shown. This is a much earlier representation of Hephaestus from Lipara. It's an island of Sicily from the 420s, 400 BC. And he is here seated with his hammer in the hand and just finished forging a Kantaros. The Trojan story continues, and one of the most famous protagonists is, of course, Hector. He was the eldest son of the Trojan king Priam and his wife Hecuba. He was the husband of Andromache and the chief warrior of the Trojan army. Sure enough, the city of Ilium in Troas used his depictions on its coinage on a regular basis. For almost all emperors, they struck coins with the Trojan War theme on them. And this one is particularly interesting because here Hector is holding his shield and in the left arm, and in the right hand he's holding a torch. He's getting ready to throw it to two Achaean ships to burn them. And this is a very well-known story in the Iliad, and they wanted to represent that story on this 30-millimeter diameter coin. You see two ships here, and Hector getting ready to throw a torch. On another scene, he is galloping his quadriga to attack the enemy. This is a coin struck for Gallienus, again in the same city. And here is one showing him triumphant. His quadriga is standing still, and he's standing in the quadriga holding a Nike in his hand, simply telling us that he was victorious in one of the battles that he attended. And this was struck for Commodus, again in the same city. There are more complicated scenes that are represented on ancient coins. And here is the one about the fight with Ajax, or Ajax. The son of the Achaean king Telamon of Salamis and his Trojan wife Hesione, Toisha, or Tosa, was the half-brother of the Achaean hero Ajax the Greater, as well as the nephew of King Priam of Troy and cousin of Hector. You see how complicated they make the plot. And interestingly, this guy decides to take sides with the Achaeans, and hiding behind the giant shield of his half-brother, Teucer fought on the side of the Achaeans against the Trojans. Enraged by Teucer's success during one of these fights, Hector picked up a huge rock and flung it at Teucer, injuring him so badly that he was forced to withdraw for some time while he recuperated from the concussions. And here is the scene. A coin struck for Caracalla, again in the same city, Ilium. And here you see Hector holding a rock here. He grabbed Teucer by the helmet, and he's about to strike him. Now, look at this one. This is supposed to be Ajax. Actually, he is running to the right, and the head is left to the left, and he's holding his spear. He's running to save himself, but at the same time trying to help Teucer at the same time. So the engraver brilliantly created the scene to show the superiority of Hector and his cows. The King Priam is also a subject on the coins of this city. This one was struck for Crispina Augusta. Again, it must have, there must be a reason for Crispina to choose this topic that is lost to us. Whether it was about her father or her husband, we don't know. But Priam here represents someone that is related to the Augusta. And that's why we have this topic there. The story of Ajax is also represented on the coins of many different cities from very early times, actually. Here is, okay, the story first. Ajax, the son of Telamon, king of Salamis, and he was regarded as the second greatest warrior after Achilles. After the death of Achilles, Ajax went mad when his armor was awarded to Odysseus, but not himself. Sure enough, he expected to have Achilles' armor, but when he didn't get, he got so upset that he decided to murder all his comrades. Athena cast a spell on Ajax that made him believe a herd of cattle were his old comrades, and he slaughtered them all. But after he finished his slaughter, he felt very bad, and he decided to kill himself honorably. To distinguish him from Ajax, son of Alias, he's called Telamonian Ajax, or Ajax the Great. And here is a coin that we see. Ajax is represented in the nude. That's why we know that it is the hero, because there is no other defining letter or representation, but this is obviously a hero based on the numismatic iconography traditions. And his killing himself is seen on this coin from Prusa at Olympum in Bithynia, modern Bursa in northwestern Anatolia, struck for Caracalla. And this city particularly struck this scene on the coinage of quite a few emperors and empresses. What it represented, what it meant to the city of Prusa is lost to us, but it must have meant something to them, because this hero is not from this part of the ancient Greek civilization. And why the scene was important for the city is another enigmatic topic that we can talk about. Ganymedes is another figure that is extremely interesting to understand the mindset of the patriarchal belief system. This beautiful young man was the son of Tros, founder of Troy. Again, the relevant story to the Trojan War. Or sometimes they say that he was the son of Laomedon, father of the Trojan king Priam. He was such a beautiful young man compared to Narcissus or Narcissus, Adonis or Hermaphroditus. He was abducted and taken to heaven to be the god's cupbearer. That is Zeus's cupbearer. Later writers say that Zeus, in love with Ganymede, disguised himself as an eagle and carried him off to be his Eromenos and set him in the sky as the constellation of Aquarius, the water carrier. The myth was extremely popular in Greece and Rome and gave religious respectability to adoration of young male companions. And sure enough, here is a coin struck for Geta in Dardanus in Troas, again, northwestern Anatolia. For Geta, when he was Caesar, Ganymede standing to the left and looking back, behind him is the eagle that represents Zeus, the head of eagle. So Ganymede is looking at the deity, the king of the Olympus, and in a submissive gesture. Now, why was this topic selected for Geta? We understand that some of the scenes that we consider obscene were not considered obscene in ancient times. It was a beautiful boy, and Geta was a young man or young boy. And there must have been some kind of a message that they thought this topic would give to the public, and that must have been the reason why they chose this representation on the coin of this young prince. Here is a coin struck for Commodus in Ilium, again in Troas. This time we have Ganymede wearing a Phrygian helmet, sitting on rocks, giving cup. There's a cup here. Actually, the eagle is about to grab the cup with one of his claws. And there's a tree behind. A complete scene of the cupbearer for Zeus. And here is a very interesting coin. Apparently, there is only one known that is in the Pergamon Museum in Berlin right now. I remember seeing this. I took a photo, but my photo was not really so good. I found this one online. In a rather obscene manner, Zeus is kissing the young man. But most likely, this is a civic coin, and this had some religious story or message, but not exactly an obscene scene for the people of Pergamon at that time. So this was a very popular topic. Of course, we can always argue that Septimus Severus was not known as a ruler who was interested in male companions, unlike Hadrian. But the story was somehow used on a coin in this major city in Western Anatolia. The story continues, the Trojan story continues with Aeneas, Ascanius, Anchises, and Palladium. Aeneas, the son of the goddess Venus, or Aphrodite, and the Trojan Anchises, fled with some remnants of the city's inhabitants as it fell to the Athenians. He took with him his son, Ancanius, his elderly father, Anchises, and the Palladium. Palladium is the Athena Pallas, Virgin Athena statue. The Trojans eventually made their way west to resettle in Italy. There they intermarried with the local inhabitants and founded the town of Lavinium, and thereby becoming the nucleus of the future Roman people. One of the descendants of Aeneas' son Ancanius, he was known as Iulus, was Rhea Silvia. Impregnated by the god Mars, she gave birth to the twins Romulus and Remus. Exposed by their great uncle Amulius, the twins were suckled by a she-wolf, but they were eventually rescued, and Romulus later founded the city of Rome. And consequently, the image of the she-wolf and the twins became the symbol of that city. So the whole scene is represented on a coin of Hadrian struck in the city of Ilium in Troas. As you see, the topic is so popular, and many, of course, the city had to promote its history. That's understandable. But here, Caesar, claiming that he descended from Venus, used the same topic on his coinage. On the obverse is the diademed head of Venus, and on the reverse, his ancestors coming to Italy. The first beauty contest is represented on quite a few coins. A very difficult scene, you would think, to engrave on a small size coin. This one is rather larger than many others, 36 millimeter. But let's go back to the story. So all gods and goddesses were invited to the wedding of Peleus and Thetis, the parents of Achilles, except Eris, the goddess of discord. She was enraged and she decided to create commotion by throwing an apple, a golden apple actually, engraved to the fairest into the gathering. And three goddesses, Athena, Hera, and Aphrodite, claimed the apple. They called Zeus to choose the winner, but he was smart enough not to poke his nose into that kind of business, and he actually asked Hermes to take them to Paris, a prince of Troy, known for his fairness. You know the rest of the story. But going back to the coinage here, a very, very elaborate scene on which we have Paris seated on rocks, as you see. He's a shepherd. That story is also really interesting, but let's not go into that at the moment. He's holding a lugobolon, a stick of a shepherd, wearing a Phrygian hat and holding the golden apple in his hand. And the three contestants closest to him is Aphrodite, fresh out of water, dressing her hair. This is a very common representation of Aphrodite. Again, as you might remember, I said numismatic iconography speaks a certain language that we can identify certain figures without a doubt. And this representation of this nude woman is 100% Aphrodite. And of course, Hera, seated as the wife of the king of the Olympians. But interestingly, she's seated on a Krillis, so a portable chair. So she's not in her realm, but she is traveling somewhere. And then in the back scene, we have Athena holding her shield in front of her. The whole scene is very meticulously planned and executed on this 36 millimeter coin, struck for Maximinus I in Tarsus, Cilicia. In the late couple of years, some very nice examples of this coin appeared in commerce, and it attracted a lot of attention. What is this story? The goddesses offered Paris a bribe to win the apple. And Athena said that he will get the command of Phrygia and the destruction of Hellas for whatever reason, or he would be the bravest of the mortals and skilled in every craft, which Paris thought was not so valuable. Hera said, besides wealth, king of Asia and Europe, that was not really so appealing either. And finally, Aphrodite said that she will give him the hand of Helen, despite knowing that she is married to Menelaus. So these, again, these complications in these stories also tell us something about the behaviors and tolerance tolerance to the behaviors of the ruling classes and gods and goddesses. And finally, Paris chose Aphrodite's gift, which led to the Trojan War as related in Homer's Iliad. The topic was represented on another coin struck for Caracalla in the city of Skepsis in Troas, not too far from Ilium. On this one, interestingly, they get Eros involved. And instead of Paris, Eros is standing on a kippus, most likely, or a small column, and extending the golden apple to the three goddesses in his right hand. Again, Athena is in the background. In the middle, it is supposed to be Hera, of course. The closest one would be Aphrodite, most likely, in this case. And then we have another figure identified as the mountain god Ida on a tree is presiding over the scene. Right here, I would like to draw your attention to something important. When we focus on a topic, we sometimes overlook the real meaning of coin production and topic choosing. So here we have the coin of Maximinus. in Tarsus. And of course, we try to make sense of the scene. What did he try to achieve by choosing this topic? So I wanted to show you some examples of his other coins that he struck in Tarsus. Almost all of them are mythological stories, mythological figures that we are going to talk about later on. Well, he chose topics from the Greek mythology, local city mythology, and the local city mythology, another local city mythology, and then the founders of the city, and himself and his son represented. There are more coins of Maximinus struck in this city, but in general, he used very different mythological scenes, not only the beauty contest topic. So when we research certain topics, coin topics, we should have an open mind and look at other coins and see what they really represent. Going back to the mythological stories, here is an Anatolian story, King Midas and his golden touch. And there are two stories that evolve around King Midas. The most famous one is Golden Touch and Ass's Ears. The Golden Touch, as you might remember, he was a very greedy person. He wanted to own all the gold in the world. And one day he comes across Silenus or Silenus, the favorite companion of Dionysus, and completely drunk and left out of the group of Dionysus. So he recognizes Silenus, and he wines and dines and takes good care of him and takes him back to the god Dionysus. And Dionysus is so happy, he says, make a wish and I will make it happen. And he says, I would like to have everything I touch turn to gold. And poof, sure enough, the god grants his wish. And King Midas, very happy, going back to his kingdom, sees an apple tree, picks one to eat, and it turns to gold. He is overjoyed, of course. He touches this, turns to gold. He touches that, turns to gold. But sure enough, before nightfall, he discovers that he won't be able to survive with this spell, because he won't be able to eat or drink anything to survive. Understanding his mistake, goes back to Dionysus, begging to free him from this spell. And finally, the god asks him to go to the source of the river Pactolus and bathe in the river. And he does, and all the gold falls from his body into the water of the river, and that hence the Lydians in Sardis found the gold and struck the first coins. So the story is really elaborate. And the second part, or the second story related to King Midas, is the ass's ears. Here is a very interesting coin from Phocaea in Ionia. This is from the 5th century BC. A very small coin, electrum, 2.54 grams, maybe 12 millimeter or something like that. But you can see the bearded man with a very long ear, ass's ear. And a bronze coin from the city of Perimnessus in Phrygia. This time we see the king with a certain helmet that covers his head, but part of a big ear is also visible here. This time he is identified as Midas Basileus, the king Midas. And on the reverse is Decoicine. Decoicine is the spirit of righteousness and justice. Why they were paired is again a mystery, but I'm sure the city of Perimnessus knew, or the people of the city of Perimnessus knew the story, and they had a reason to pair these two figures on this coin. And here is another one. This one is from Midium in Phrygia, struck for Diademanian as Caesar. And this is also an unpublished coin, appeared in commerce a couple of years ago. Again, the king is defined with his name, Midion, as you can see, and A is highlighted. It was engraved very large. So the story is there was a competition, a music competition between Apollo and Pan. Apollo was playing the lyre, and King Midas happens to be present. And who can challenge a mighty god like Apollo? After they both performed their pieces, Apollo, of course, thought he was the winner, but King Midas, not being so smart, thought that that just the opposite. And Apollo says, "What kind of ears do you have? I'll give you an ass's ears, so that you live with that kind of embarrassment the rest of your life." So, of course, he was unable to save himself from this spell. He had to build a kind of headdress that would cover his ear. But every now and then he had to have a haircut, and his hairdresser had to see that he had ass's ears. And he, being the king, he ordered the hairdresser not to say it to anyone. And he promised, but it was so difficult for him to keep the promise. So one night he went out into the pasture and dug a hole and whispered into the hole, saying, "King Midas has ass's ears." And he covered it back. And then, of course, rain came, and some reeds grew there. And as they waved in the wind, they were all singing the same thing: "King Midas has ears, ass's ears. King Midas has ass's ears." So it was impossible for the King Midas to keep his secret. The Marsyas story is very similar in this case. He's also a shepherd who happened to cross his roads with these mighty gods and goddesses, unfortunately. The story begins with Athena. Athena develops this double aulos, double flute. As you can see here, a coin from Apamea in Phrygia, Western Anatolia, for Septimius Severus. She's seated on some rocks, and playing her instrument. Her cheek is puffed. She's puffing on the instrument. And here is a pond. And she's, as you see, sitting to the left and twisting her body to the right, trying to see herself in the pond here. And because the other goddesses are making fun of her, saying that she looks very ugly when she plays the instrument. In the back, behind the rocks, you see a figure here, and this one is poor little Marsyas watching the scene. Athena, feeling bad by the feedback of other goddesses, throws away the instrument, and Marsyas immediately picks it up and he starts to play, and he masters it. And sure enough, the city of Apamea uses this topic on its coinage from very early times. Here is an autonomous strike from the 1st century BC. The shepherd is on a meander pattern, playing his instrument. And the topic was so interesting, and it represented some other things than mythological stories, that it also appears on a coin of Berytus in Phoenicia. This is a coin struck for Elagabalus. There is a gateway, most likely the entrance to the city, and Marsyas is represented entering the city, most likely bringing the city joy and happiness, the idea. The topic continues to appear on other coins. Here is a coin of Maximinus again. I briefly mentioned this. With Apollo, with Marsyas hanging from a tree here. In the middle is a muse, or maybe Homeros, seated. There is also an animal seated here, almost. And this is the end of the story. Marsyas challenged Apollo to a competition, and of course he lost it, and he was flayed alive and hung on a tree. And here is that scene represented on a coin of Germe in Mysia. It's a pseudo-autonomous strike during the time of Gordian III. Apollo is standing here, not looking at his victim. He's looking to the left, and the satyr Marsyas is hanging from a pine tree, as you can see here. And the same topic is represented in a marble statue in the Istanbul Archaeology Museum right now. I visited that museum several times, and every time I went there, I admired the superior art represented in this sculpture there. Pan and the Syrinx. Again, we're talking about musicians. Let's go back to Pan. Watching over shepherds and their flocks, his worship probably began in Arcadia. He has the hindquarters, legs, and horns of a goat, in the same manner as a faun or satyr. Actually, faun is the Roman figure of Pan in the Roman mythology, but satyrs are also represented in similar guise. Apparently, in later history or later mythological times. Why do I say that? Here is an Arcadian league coin from Megalopolis in Arcadia. and Pan is represented in the figure of a nude young man. So he doesn't have the hindquarters legs of a goat. However, here is a Roman period representation from Hadrianopolis in Thrace for Gordian III. Here the god is represented just like it was defined in the stories, holding a logobolon and his syrinx, his instrument syrinx here. And here is another one. He is seated. This time he is playing the instrument. This is a coin from Silion in Pamphylia, southwestern Anatolia for Philippus II. So the story is he comes across a lovely forest nymph of Arcadia, Syrinx. She was the daughter of Ladon, the river god at that time. Of course, he's being interested, started to chase her, and as she was running away, she begged her sisters to help, and they turned her into reeds by the river. And but Pan was so infatuated; he wanted to have her no matter what. So he grabbed, according to some storytellers, 7 of the reeds, or others 9 of the reeds. He cut them off and put them together, and hearing that they are making some lovely sound, he created the musical instrument that we call syrinx right now, or pan flute right now. And the story is wonderfully represented on many coins. The judgment of Ares is not a very common, but not completely uncommon either as a coin topic. Ares killed Poseidon's son Halerhotius for raping his daughter Alcippe. Ares was tried for the murder on the Areopagus in Athens, but he was acquitted and thus emerged unscathed from what the Greeks believed to have been the first trial in the history of the world. And here we see a scene. In the middle is Ares, obviously. And on the right-hand side, we can easily identify this figure as Hermes because of his kerykeion that he's holding in his hand. But the figure on the left one is not so easy to identify, but from ancient sources, we know that it is Dike, the goddess of justice, fair judgments, and the rights. So he is represented, and the role of Hermes here is to deliver the final decision to Zeus, of course. He is actually representing Zeus. Zeus is not to take sides in dealings like this. So he sends Hermes to represent himself. A very interesting scene that appears on the coins of Siedra for quite a few emperors. Again, why they chose this scene as a coin topic, there must have been some kind of a story or incident happening, and this story must have been really important for the city to use as a coin type. Abduction of Persephone, or Persephone. it's a very popular topic in agricultural communities in ancient times. Persephone was the daughter of Demeter and Zeus. Demeter is the goddess of the agricultural fertility. And Persephone one day was picking flowers, and Hades saw her, and he was so captivated by her beauty, he had to take her with him to his realm in the underworld. Demeter, very upset, tried to find her daughter, was not able to find her. She stopped giving fertility to the land, and the whole world was in despair because of that. And finally, Zeus intervened, and of course he was not in a position to impose Hades to do anything, but he again sent Hermes to negotiate, and finally they agreed to return Persephone for 6 months to be with her mother, and 6 months to be in the underworld with Hades. Hence, we have the seasons. 6 months under the world, winter, fall, and winter. We don't get any crops growing, and 6 months with her mother. Spring and summer, we have all the crops growing. And the scene here is the abduction of Persephone. Hermes, Hades is in his quadriga, driven by Nike, actually, here, as you see. And the daughter of Demeter is in protest. She's not cooperating. And the whole scene is represented in the most lively manner in this city called Daldis in Lydia, for a coin struck for Philip I. And a better representation here, she is literally struggling, dropping herself, but Hades is grabbing her by the waist, most likely, and not letting her go. And here is a coin from Cyzicus in Mysia for Antoninus Pius. Here we see Demeter riding her serpent-drawn biga with 2 torches in her hand, looking for her lost daughter. This story continues, and finally this agreement is done. The daughter of Demeter is returned to the world, and but what's going to happen to the land that became infertile? So Demeter finally gives the task to her son, or sometimes called an aide, a companion, Triptolemus. So she gives her sacred serpent biga to Triptolemus and some seeds, and asks him to seed the earth again. And here is a coin, again from Tarsus in Cilicia for Caracalla, showing Triptolemus in action. And here is another one, a medallion for Faustina I, wife of Antoninus Pius. It's a more elaborate scene. We have Triptolemos here, about to take off with the serpent Biga, but he is getting something from the figure here. Of course, this one is Persephone's mother, and Faustina is in the guise of the goddess here. So she is giving the seeds to Triptolemos. And here we have Talus, the river god, seated or reclining, raising, Talus is the goddess of the earth, protector of the marriage and fertility, and identified with Greek Gaia. So in the Roman religion, she's Gaia, and she's also part of the scene. So the political message here is the empress is bringing fertility to the world. Hades is also represented on ancient coins. Why on earth would you consider the king of the death as a coin topic? It doesn't sound very likely to us, but it meant something to the people. Here's a coin from Anazarbus in Cilicia for Volusian. On the reverse is a god seated facing, wearing some kind of a headdress that we are used to seeing on the head of Serapis, the Egyptian version of Zeus. But from the Cerberus, three-headed dog, we know that this is actually Hades or Hades. So he's seated, resting on his scepter and caressing the heads of Cerberus on this coin. And here is another one from Anchialus in Thrace for Gordian III and Tranquillina, his wife, on the obverse, as you see. About the same scene, he is extending his right hand to touch his dog. The topic is very popular, and it appeared on a coin of Kyzikos in Mysia. This is a very, very small coin, 11.5 millimeters, as you can see. It's a coin type for this city. So, so the meaning that we see on these bronze coins and the one that we see on this electrum can be very, very different. Here is a matter of symbolism, but here a matter of storytelling. Some kind of an imposition to the people we can talk about. And here is another coin from Acarnania in Thessaly. This is also quite early. The Kerberos is represented in the most definitive way, as you can see. Let's talk about a love story. Albeit it ends in tragedy, it is beautiful to talk about love stories. This is Leander and Hero. The love story of Leander of Abydos and the Asian side of the Hellespont, and Hero, priestess of Aphrodite of Cestus on the European side. Leander would swim each night 2 miles across the strait to woo her, and in the early morning, he would swim back to Abydos. To guide him in this dangerous journey, Hero would climb a tower on the shore near Cestus with a lamp, as you can see here, and guide the guide her lover. As you can see, he is swimming with all the fish around him. One stormy night, however, Lander drowned when his strength failed. And when Hero became aware of his death, she cast herself in despair from the tower into the waters below, and she was also. A sad story, but on the coins of each city, so Cestus and Abydos, this is a very, very popular topic. And interestingly, on this coin of Cestus, we see Eros flying and lighting the lamp, the oil lamp that Hero holds in her right hand. A very, very imaginative scene. The story of Poseidon and Athena is interesting. In Athens and Attica, Athena was blessed for the introduction of the olive tree. This came to happen as a result of a claim or a competition. After the city was founded, they had to choose a patron god or goddess. And Athena and Poseidon claimed the position, and they were asked to give the city an important gift so that they could be chosen. So Poseidon struck his trident on the ground on Acropolis, and water emerged, but unfortunately it was salty water, so it was no use. And against that, Athena brought the olive tree, which was a very good tree with great fruit that you could consume as is and get oil from it. And sure enough, they chose Athena as the patron of the city. Here is a coin of Athens from the 2nd century BC. There is a tree in the middle. On the left is Poseidon getting ready to strike his trident. On the right-hand side is Athena. Around the tree is a serpent, and on the tree or in the tree, Athena's sacred bird, an owl, is perching. The scene is very beautifully depicted. And here is another coin from maybe earlier period, again for the city of Athens. The attribute of Athena, the owl, and the olive tree, and an amphora, obviously for olive oil, represented here. And when the excavators started excavations in the Acropolis, they planted an olive tree. I don't know how many decades ago, but to represent this mythological story, I think they did a great job. 12 labors of Heracles are very popular coin subjects. Almost all of Heracles's labors are represented on ancient coins, and even more. Heracles achieved or went into struggle in many different situations, but his 12 labors are well known. As you can see, all the stories are represented on ancient coins from different time periods and from different cities. That means the stories simply touch the heart of anyone throughout the ages, centuries. I will only weigh on a couple of them. This is the first labor, Nemean lion. After murdering his wife and children in a state of insane rage induced by the goddess Hera, Heracles sought advice from the god Apollo as to how he might expiate the crime. He was to travel to the court of his cousin, King Eurystheus in Thrace, and do whatever Eurystheus wished. As Eurystheus hated Heracles, the king compelled the hero to undergo a series of 12 labors. Actually, it was 10, but he didn't consider 2 of the labors challenging enough, as Heracles could achieve them very easily. He added 2 more. And each of them became more complicated and wide-ranging than the previous one. So the first one was the Nemean lion. The story is very well known. I'm not going to go into detail. And the 12th one is considered to be the most difficult one, because he had to go to the underworld and bring the undoable thing, achieve the undoable labor, bring the Kerberos that we just talked about, the favorite dog of Hades. And here is a coin of Heraclea Pontica in Bithynia for the time of Gordian III. We have on the obverse the bust of Heracles, and on the reverse the scene that he is dragging Kerberos by chain before a statuette of Hera on Achilles here. Here are 2 more examples. Erymanthian boar, he's bringing it to his patron, Eurystheus, and he's hiding himself in a large bronze crater. They usually make fun of Eurystheus here, as you can see. And here is another one, again, from Tarsus in Caracalla, showing Heracles fighting the 9-headed Lernaean Hydra with his club, as you can see. Now, a group member happened to came across this coin a couple of weeks ago, and then the group discussed about the scene here, and it was a very, very interesting discussion among the group members. And then the same group member found that the same topic or the same coin recorded on the RPC website. And apparently it's a coin struck in Cilium in Pamphylia for Faustina II during the time of Antoninus Pius or Marcus Aurelius, daughter of Antoninus Pius and wife of Marcus Aurelius. On the obverse is the bust of the Augusta, but on the reverse we have an interesting scene. There's a figure in the middle seated on rocks, and on the left-hand side, from the way the figure was depicted, we know it is Hercules or Heracles, and it was easy to identify that. And in the back of the figure, we have another figure putting one foot on a rock and holding a long spear, most likely, or staff, or scepter. And here we have some figures, and unfortunately, the second example is not very well preserved either. And then in front, we have another figure. On this one, it looks like the forepart of a bull. On this one, it looks like a boar with a long protruding nose. So it was not really possible for us to come to a conclusion to define the scene. The suggested explanation is Eurystheus was here, Heracles standing right. He's holding a club in left hand, and in the middle, Eurystheus on the right, and there's an attendant on in the back holding a spear. They say there's a bull left a bow. Later on, we will discover that it is not a bull. And then another bull, they say. And again, the same group member found this coin, again, from Aspendos in Pamphylia. So they're not too far from one another. And on this one, we can see the figure in the upper part of the coin is a lion, actually. And the figure here looks like a bull, most likely. So it's obvious that this is the scene where Heracles appears before Eurystheus. Whether it is he's about to get his next mission, or he completed his missions and he's just reporting, is unknown to us, or at least to me. But the way the whole scene was represented is extremely interesting, and it was telling a certain story to the people of those cities. And what is more interesting, a separate subject here for us, is that the same topic was used for two different cities. And we were discussing about regional mints in Cilicia, and this group member also brought this up, saying that probably Pamphylia had the same situation. There was a central mint in Pamphylia where they had a number of coin die engravers and workshop attendants that were creating coins for different cities. Just a side story, I thought you would be interested in knowing. Zeus and Avropa, or Europa, the daughter of the king of Sidon, and her companions were picking flowers in a meadow. Seeing her, Zeus immediately falls in love with her, and he turns himself into a bull and joins the herd nearby. So just a reminder here, Zeus always appears in the guise of something else but himself, because the way he looked, if he appeared to other humans, with his lightning and fire, he would turn them into a light bulb, or sometimes into ashes. So he would never appear to mortals in his personal guise. So he has to turn into something else, not to not to kill the person that he is interested in. Anyways, he turns himself into a bull and joins the herd nearby. And as usual, Hermes is his biggest help, and he leads the herd down towards the girls. Zeus approaches Europa, charms her by his gracious ways, and carries her off to Crete, where she subsequently gives birth to his sons Minos, Radamantis, and Sarpedon. Here is the beginning of the story. Hermes is on the reverse of the coin, but on the obverse, as you see, we have Zeus approaching to Europa. Oh, it's a coin of Phaistos in Crete from around 350 BC. And they are, as you see, in a very heated conversation. They are talking about whatever Zeus chose to talk about. And here is another coin. And the next scene, whatever they did, Zeus managed to charm Europa, and she mounted the bull, and now he is flying over the Mediterranean, taking her to Crete. And the Mediterranean, the sea, is very elaborately depicted here under the bull with a fish included. This is a coin from Seleucia at Kalykatnos in Cilicia for Gordian III. And again, the story is well known in previous periods. Here's a small coin from Kyzikos in Mysia from 550 to 450 BC. The same scene can be seen here. The story continues. It's like a soap opera. In the second part, we have Minos and Pasiphae and Minotaur. So Minos marries Pasiphae, but unfortunately fails to sacrifice a prime bull sent to him by Poseidon. To punish him, Poseidon makes Pasiphae fall madly in love with the bull. With the aid of Daedalus, Pasiphae lets herself become impregnated by the bull. Daedalus makes a hollow wooden cow for her to get inside so she could mate with the bull. The resulting offspring was a monster called the Minotaur. And here it is on the coin of Gortina in Crete. Both Knossos and Gortina struck coins with the same representation. The only difference is Knossos has a legend, but Gortina usually doesn't have a legend. On the reverse is the famous labyrinth that we know from the story. Now, the most interesting part of this story is the claim of Roman Emperor Galba. When he became emperor, he even displayed a family tree in his hall, in which he carried back his ancestry on his father's side to Jupiter, and on his mother's to Pasiphae, the wife of Minos. Isn't that interesting? Well, if Julius Caesar descended from Venus, why shouldn't he descend from Minos? Very interesting lineage. And the labyrinth and Theseus and Minotaur, I'm sure everybody knows the story very well. I'm not going to go into detail with that. But here is a coin of Knossos from very early times, 300, 270 BC, as you see. A very elaborate depiction of the labyrinth. The idea was developed many, many years ago, and the idea is nicely represented on a small silver coin. And the achievement of Theseus is, of course, had to be highlighted, as he was an Athenian hero. He was like Heracles, but his manners were more civilized than Heracles. He represented well-educated Athenian youth rather than Hercules, who defied education but solely rely on his strength. So that's why Theseus was a better role model for many young people in ancient times, especially during the Roman period. Many different cities chose the same subject to promote the philosophy behind Theseus, behind what Theseus represented at that time. As you see here, a coin of Cyrus Alexander from Nicomedia in Bithynia. Theseus standing left, head turned right, holding club in one hand, and maybe the head or one of the horns of the monster Minotaur, and trying to about to strike the monster. Dionysus and Ariadne. The story of Dionysus and Ariadne is really interesting. Ariadne is the one who helped actually Theseus to kill the Minotaur. However, and she was in love with Theseus, but Theseus lost interest in her, and he left, and unfortunately, Ariadne felt extremely unhappy about this story, and so he went to a cave. She went to a cave, and she was sleeping in that cave. And the scene is depicted on this very nice coin of Pergamon in Mysia for Septimius Severus and Julia Donne. And you can easily relate the story. It's a love story, the beginning of a love story that as a result of an unhappy love story. So here we see Ariadne reclining with drapery around her body. These rocks represent the cave, and there's another series of rocks maybe here, and again rocks around her. And there are two figures here, and they are identified as Maenads. One is a Maenad holding Tirsus in his hand. It's most likely the staff of Dionysus and a wreath. And then there's a satyr here holding a pedum or logobolon and extending one hand. So it is the finding of Ariadne scene that will start the love affair between Dionysus and Ariadne. And the love affair turns into a serious relationship, and the marriage procession is on its way. And for a god like Dionysus, who better than centaurs or centaurs to pull his cart. And here we see two centaurs, one holding a kitara The other one is turning and saluting the newly married couple, and they're about to go their own way. A coin for Maximinus from Tarsus in Cilicia. And here is a gold aureus of Geta when he was Caesar. Bacchus is Roman Dionysus, and this is the wedding feast scene with all kinds of musicians and Silenus and other Maenads are around the newly married couple celebrating the marriage. We should also talk about Orpheus. He is said to be the son of Calliope, the muse of epic poetry, and Algirus, a king of Thrace, or sometimes it is said the father was Apollo. As we know, these deities always have affairs with mortal women who are already married to other men. And he was considered one of the chief poets and musicians of antiquity. By the sound of his music and singing, he could charm the wild beast, coax the trees and rocks into dance, even change the course of rivers. He was one of the Argonauts, and when the Argo had to pass the island of the Sirens, it was Orpheus's music which prevented the crew from being lured to destruction. And here is a coin of Antoninus Pius from Alexandria in Egypt, showing us the master musician playing his guitar, and all the wild beasts are around him in a docile manner. They are listening to him. And here is a coin of Geta in Philippopolis in Thrace. As you see, Egypt, Thrace, from very different regions, the same story is used for different cultures. One of the last topics that I will talk about is Priapos. Again, it's a very interesting topic that you would not think would appear on coins, but it is there. Again, this has nothing to do with obscenity. Again, there is a religious message is planned. But let's go back to the story. It must have been Zeus who deposited the seed which incited the creation of Priapos, according to ancient writers. Ever jealous Hera got overly upset because this affair of her husband, and with a magic touch to Aphrodite's belly, cursed the child growing here in the way most offensive to Aphrodite. She made him ugly. So we understand that somehow Zeus had an affair with Aphrodite, and Hera got angry with that. Interestingly, Hera never fights Zeus. Whatever Zeus does, Hera always deals with the other party. And this is really interesting in the imposition of the patriarchal system. Anyways, going back to Priapos, he was born with a huge belly, huge feet, hands, nose, tongue, and a gigantic, always erect phallus. The obscenity of the creature so offended Aphrodite that she cast him out of her realm and abandoned him in the wilderness. It was also said that he was utterly chasing after all the goddesses, that the gods kicked him out, and Priapos fell to earth. he was taken in by a herdsman who found that wherever this incredible creature went, everything grew like crazy. Plants shot up from the ground, and animals hopped upon each other, copulating furiously and giving birth. Priapus soon became known as a fertility god, but this is only a part of his aspect. He also was said to cure impotence, bring good luck, and was particularly adept at warding off the evil eye. Interestingly, in museums and in certain ancient art auctions, we come across little amulets of phallus, and they must have been very, very common in ancient times. And some ancient writers talk about women who would like to have babies or have difficulty in having babies would visit the shrine of Priapus and wear those phallus amulets, or they would tie it with a rope and swing it in their hands, praying to the god to give them a child. And here is a coin from Nicopolis at Istrum in Moesia for Septimius Severus, showing the Itipalic Priapus standing and pointing the tip of his phallus with his right hand. And here is another one. This is interesting. Again, from the same city, Priapus standing, holding patera in one hand, so it's a libation scene. But most interestingly, on top of his phallus is a basket of fruits. So definitely a god of fertility in this case. Another city, Lampsacus in Mysia, a coin struck for Maximinus first, shows a kind of statue in the form of a statue. So we understand that city might have had a statue for this god. Buried Itipalic Priapus, standing to the left, and he's holding a Tirsos, so he's related to Dionysus, and a Kantaros in his hand, or a cup, whether he's pouring, doing a libation over his phallus or something else is unknown. We understand that he was worshipped as a serious god from this depiction of him in a hexa-style temple, again from Lampsacus in Mysia, a coin struck for Philippus I. Let's talk about finally a known figure, a known historical figure around who mythological stories were developed. Alexander the Great. Of course, the story is very well known, but here is a coin of Abydos in Troas, in the Dardanelles, struck for Septimius Severus. The elaborate scene shows Alexander the Great at the prow of the galley. It's entering the harbor. He is embarking his Asian campaign against the Persian Empire. He's holding a spear and looking back with right hand raised. He's encouraging his followers to come after him. And two soldiers behind him are overlooking. You have the bust of Athena here, and there is another ship coming. And so Athena is seated. So Athena is accompanying the hero. And there is a musician or a trumpet player on top of a tower declaring the coming of the hero. I guess you couldn't explain a story much better than this. And here is another coin that we have to do some reading to decipher. Here is a goat, a coin struck in Aigai in Cilicia for Diademenian as Caesar. A goat standing right, torches attached to the horns, as you see, torches here. So the story is that so this city is located not too far from Issos, where the famous decisive war between the Persians and Macedonians took place. And the story is that Alexander has a smaller army and the Persians have a much larger army. And Alexander wanted to put fear into the hearts of the Persian soldiers and gathered a huge flock of goats and tied torches to their horns and started to move them towards the war ground at night, which deceived the opponents, the Persians, and they thought Alexander had a huge army coming towards them. So interesting mythological stories were created around all kinds of figures in ancient times, either as a political message or as a religious message, or sometimes just to promote a city's identity, and sometimes to promote kings or queens or emperors or empresses' message to the people. But no matter what, they were very widely used, and apparently they were appreciated by the members of the society at that time, and hence we have so many coins with mythological stories. I have some further reading recommendations here. Of course, Theogony is a must, and Metamorphoses by Ovid is another must if you are interested in ancient mythology, Greek and Roman mythologies. And civic coins and civic politics in the Roman East, I learned a lot. I refer to this book very often. And then Roman Provincial Coins by Wayne Salas is another good book that I refer to. Coins and Their Cities by Price and Trell is an excellent resource. And this book that I found in the local thrift store a couple of years ago proved to be a very, very nice book, An Introduction to Greek Mythology. If you can ever find it, by David Bellingham, it's a very nice read. He brought together all the stories in such a good way. I really appreciated reading the whole book from cover to cover. So I hope you enjoyed the talk, and if you have any questions, I'll be happy to answer them.